Thank you very much, Speaker, and it's a pleasure to rise on this grievance debate today. And I'll leave my colleague, the Shadow Minister for Police, to respond to a few of those comments from the member for Bayswater. But, Speaker, today I grieve not only for the Victorian people, but I grieve for a lot of you up there who will not have your seats at the next election because of the state's mismanagement. Thank you, Speaker. Now, I won't go in, Speaker, to predicting exactly what the election result will be, because we're too far away from that. But I can guarantee you, Speaker, there's going to be a major swing away from some of those sitting on the other side. The polls currently show this, even this far out, and things aren't going to get any better for members of the government, because there is very, very good reason for it. A number of you are going to lose your seats at the next election, and not necessarily to people over on this side. Some of you will lose your seats to the Greens. Yes, thank you, Speaker. The reality of it is you have a millstone hanging around your neck.
Member for Gippsland
East. And that is the state debt. The state debt. Oh, I'm aware of that. Sorry, Speaker. That is the state debt.
Through the chair.
Yeah, I acknowledge, Speaker, so I apologise. The state debt that is hanging around this government's neck is the millstone. We are hitting $178 billion is indeed the forecast, and the commitment to the Suburban Rail Loop is the reason why a lot of your pre-election commitments have been kicked down the road. It is the reason why we are facing...
Order. Minister for Transport and Infrastructure has a point of order.
Speaker, perhaps if the member for Gippsland East could, rather than say you, just say members of the government.
Order.
We just, so delete you.
Order. I have directed the member for Gippsland East to direct his commentary through the chair, not at the chair or at members opposite.
Wait, no, I apologise for not abiding by your ruling. I was just trying to make a point. But, Speaker, as the member for Bulleen pointed out in this chamber yesterday, with the situation that this government finds itself in, somebody has to pay. And unfortunately, it will be members of the backbench who aren't sitting in the cabinet room making these decisions that will pay the price. And the commitment on top of our state debt to stage one of the Suburban Rail Loop of $35 billion is simply sucking all of the state's finances down the drain and not allowing the projects that we want on this side of the chamber for our electorates and what a lot of the backbenchers on that side want for their electorates. They will just not happen. Unless you're in a seat that had Commonwealth Games funding committed to it, Speaker, you got very, very little out of the most recent budget. Very, very little. And Victorians know we can't afford the SRL. We on this side know that we can't. And I know that a number on the other side of the chamber are aware that we can't. And some, indeed, we are aware, have spoken up. We had the Deputy Premier raising concerns about the SRL before the Premier came out the following day and psychologically realigned him, and he had to wind back his comments. But because of the state debt and the commitment to SRL, a number of the issues that this state is facing cannot be resolved. Let's talk about a few of them. We talk about health. Where do you start? We saw the screenshots of the departmental PowerPoints to establish local health service networks, code for board and CEO mergers. We've read the emails that went to our hospital CEOs about reducing budgets. We saw them. Hospitals asked to reduce frontline services, asked to reduce back-of-office services. There are not people walking around our hospitals with nothing to do or jobs that can just go. All of those jobs are part of our health service network. CEOs said we simply cannot have these savings that the government is asking to do without impacting on frontline services. We had the announcement of some increased funding, but then the Treasurer comes out today and puts a big question mark over that. If we're going to have increased funding for our health services, we really need to know where that money is coming from and where that money is going. And the issue is that if we have boards that have been had heavy-duty Labor appointments to them made over recent years, making recommendations about amalgamations, our communities will not accept that. They will simply not accept that. And the those members who are representing health services in those areas will suffer the consequences. I can tell you, if we go through with mergers in Gippsland of hospital boards and operating under one CEO, I wouldn't like to be Miss Shing's number 2 spot on the upper house ticket in Gippsland. That will not go well, and you can duplicate that all around the state. We have an ambulance crisis in this state, an ambulance crisis. Here's what a 2015 media release said by the then Parliamentary Secretary for Health and now Minister for Health, who said the Labor reforms will result in better and faster response times. Well, how's that going? Ambulances are ramped. Hospitals are unable to cope.
Order. Order. Could members acknowledge the chair when they walk in front of the mace, please?
Ambulances are pulling out at hospitals and they can't get their patients into these hospitals. The minister has overseen a complete mess in our health sector. Bairnsdale, on I think it was July 19, we had 6 ambulances ramped at the Bairnsdale Hospital, staff shortages at the hospital, and the hospital was full. The CEO had to put out a statement in the local media the next day apologising because they didn't have the staff to cater to get people off the ambulances, and the hospital was full. For those on that side, free up the money from the SRL and invest it into our health service and help yourself. Our bush nursing centres have got to put up with the nurses deserve their pay rise, but a 28% pay increase over 5 years. Where are our bush nursing centres going to get that money from? In housing, we recently had the housing minister in the other place saying on ABC radio there's 30 new homes in eastern Victoria, 30 new public housing homes, giving yourself a good old pat on the back. The trouble is we've had more than 30 either sold off or demolished. In the local government areas of East Gippsland, Wellington and Latrobe, we've had a net loss of public housing homes since 2015. A housing crisis, and since 2015 we've had a net loss. Then we have the rental market in crisis. So what's the government's response to our rental crisis? Let's put additional land taxes on landlords. It exacerbates the problem. It is astounding that could be the answer to the rental problem that we have. It's going to work in the opposite direction. Then we had the recent housing summit. I mean, members of the government walked out of that. The Treasurer was accused of having a tin ear. People who attended that housing summit described it as being vacuous by industry participants. For those on that side, you need a new approach. You need to make some change. I'm not talking about the member for Essendon. Sorry? I'm not talking about the member for Essendon here, Speaker. I'm talking about the person who normally sits there, needs to change to save some of these seats up the back. And they know it. I know that they know it. Now, Speaker, on to roads, Speaker. Our roads are falling to bits. I've been in this place for 14 years and it's the first time I've heard metropolitan members standing up most sitting weeks complaining about our roads. And I can assure you in country Victoria, they haven't got much better. They have not got much better. I had one truckie come into my office last week and he made the comment that the Monaro Highway looked like a battlefield. He referenced it to looking something like the Somme battlefield. We have the National Transport Research Organisation saying 91% of our roads in Victoria are either very poor or poor. 91%, the worst state. And what is this government's response to our poor roads? What is its response? Its response is to have less roads maintenance funding, 16% less than it had in 2015. How are the roads going to get better when we've got less funding going in? I say again, Speaker, to members on the other side, get rid of the SRL, invest in your health, invest in housing, invest in roads where our constituents want it to go. If I'm sitting in a Western Suburbs Labor seat at the moment or a country Labor seat, I don't think I'd be too happy about this money going into the SRL and sucking all the investment out of their electorates, unless they're in a cancelled Commonwealth Games electorate, of course. But It is a problem, and they know you need change down here or you're on a pathway to disaster. Speaker, we've then got to push to increase national parks. We're not looking after the parks we've got, Speaker. I try and get a road graded in one of my national parks and I get an answer back that we haven't got the funds to do it. Talk to any parks employee around the state and they simply say they don't have the resources to do the work that needs to be done. And we're looking at increasing our national parks and making the network bigger. I mean, it is just ludicrous decision-making to even be considering that. I move on to education. A few years ago, we were calling ourselves the education state. Well, the NAPLAN results that came out today are incredibly concerning. It found that 1 in 3 Victorian students is failing to meet the basic standards of maths and English. That 1/3 of students in Year 3 is finding it very challenging to count to 20 in Year 3. We have massive, massive teacher shortages across the state. Massive teacher shortages. This is in the so-called education state. I notice we've stopped using that term on the other side of the chamber so much recently. We started the year with 800 teacher vacancies. We've now got 1,600 teacher vacancies, and our teachers do a great job, but they need support. They absolutely need support. We actually had the minister come out and say he was going to reintroduce phonics into the education curriculum, which was good, but then a letter came out from the union to say don't take any notice of it. We saw that letter, we saw that email that came out. I mean, who is the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail? We're also falling behind other states in relation to our educational outcomes. We are no longer the education state. I say to those on the other side, scrap the SRL. Invested in education, invested in health, invested in mental health, invested in roads. Invest that money in the areas that our community members want it invested. It is critically important. Speaker, they know on the other side that they need to make a change if they're going to survive. I have a look at some of these. I mean, I wouldn't like to be in the seat of Bass sitting on 50.2. The member for Bayswater in the chamber on 54. You're in trouble, I reckon. You mightn't be here next time around. The member for Box Hill. Yeah, I know that, Danny. The member for Footscray. The member for Footscray. I'm hearing you every time. A 13.9%. When it comes down to the Greens, and you're in trouble with the Greens, but when it comes down to the Greens, Speaker, I'm on the side of the government. I don't want them surviving. I would much rather have people on this side of the chamber in here than people who are sitting up there. But we have a number of people, Footscray, Northcote, Pascoe Vale, Preston, going to lose their seats to the Greens, Speaker. It's a shame. I don't want that to happen. I don't like them. Less than you do. But we have a lot of others who are really going to struggle. And by making a simple change, you will give yourselves a chance to survive. A chance to survive. So, Speaker, I'll wind that up. And, Acting Speaker, I do note, Speaker, that I may have used the term you a little bit too often, Speaker, in this speech, but it may not have all been accidental, Speaker, because I've been trying to get a point across that it is their political futures that are at risk because of decisions within the Cabinet room. And unless they make a change, Speaker, they're going to be in dire straits. And I know there's been a bit of unrest, I know there's been a bit of talk, and we heard about a bit of discussion in the caucus room this week. But unless there is change made, there's going to be a lot of people on that side who won't be here after 2026. And that's a fact. And, Speaker, for the betterment of the state, we need to get rid of the SRL, we need to start winding down our debt, and we need to start spending money in this state where it should be spent. And that is in those key areas of health, of roads, in education, in mental health is another one that I haven't covered off on today, in our education system. And unless that happens, it's bye-bye to a lot of people from their seats on the other side, and we look forward to getting into government and spending money in the right places.